Thank you very much. Minglaba to everyone. And before I start off with my presentation, we come as a team from Myanmar. So, GTA, I am. This is Aung Swar. Yes. And in the audience also, we have our team. So I'd like to introduce our team first. Ms. Yim Yo Su from Inle Princess Resort. And we have Mr. Rakwi Pong from Kachin State and from Myanmar. And my very good colleague, who is also Myanmar, is Mrs. Nicole Heusler. Minglaba, everybody. So this is Innovating CBT in ASEAN, and I will be starting off on the community involvement in tourism in Myanmar. And before I go on with it, I would like to express our pleasure for it to be given this opportunity to make a presentation here on behalf of the team, on behalf of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. And thank you very much. I would like to extend to the CBT-I and the National Research Council of Thailand, and also the organizers individually and collectively, and to all participants who are here from ASEAN member countries. And it's a pleasure for me because right from this morning till now, we've had experienced speakers, experienced presentations, and I still have not stopped learning. I am still an eternal student, eternal learner, and I will go on learning till I drop. Because you go on shopping till you drop, but for me, I'll go on learning till I drop. Thank you. Now, the content of my first part of the presentation will cover the recent developments, the links to the community involvement in tourism, a community involvement in tourism policy, policy on community involvement that we have in tourism, which has just been launched, stakeholders' roles and responsibilities incorporated in the community involvement in tourism, and the standards for community involvement in tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, as everybody has been saying that for the first time in the tourism development of Myanmar since 1995, 2013 has started off with a record-breaking performance. We are experiencing fast growth. It's more than 1 million international arrivals in Myanmar, and this has definitely resulted and directly resulted from the substantive political and economic reforms and the lifting of sanctions, and of course, easing of censorship. I'm mentioning this, then only we will understand why we are new now. And this turning point is setting a stage for rapid and continuous growth in the tourism industry in 2013 and also beyond. And here you would notice that in 2012, we had more than 1 million tourist arrivals, which we had never dreamt of in the past. Now, this is the community policy on community involvement in tourism, which we have called it as CIT. So at the outset, Myanmar has now this policy, and it links up to the policy that we had before and also to the coming master plan. So at the outset, as we have introduced, thanks to Mrs. Nicole Heusler, who have worked closely with me as a counterpart, also from the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism. And this policy has come about as a result of the cooperation between Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, Myanmar Tourism Federation, and Hans Seidel Foundation of Germany. The links to existing policy would go back to the Myanmar Responsible Tourism Policy. And in it, we would find 9 aims, and the inclusion of local communities is noted repeatedly within the Myanmar Responsible Tourism Policy. With the statement in Aim 1, if we have a look at it, the Aim 1 says, tourism is a national priority sector integrating domestic and international tourism into the national economic policy and developing linkages between tourism and other economic sectors to maximize benefits. Furthermore, it also strengthens cooperation mechanisms within the public sector and with the various tourism sector stakeholders. So when we talk about the various tourism sector stakeholders, we are including the private sector, the local communities, and the civil society. Aim 2 mentions about the developing the broad-based local socio-economic development, whereby spreading of benefits in the community, encouraging local entrepreneurs and civil society engagement so as to secure livelihoods for women and youth and alleviation of poverty. The aims included also aims 3, 7, 8, 9, as I just mentioned that there are 9 aims, also directly or indirectly relates to community involvement in tourism as they focus on cultural heritage, networking, and stakeholder process, capacity building, and safeguards. So this is the link which includes the framework, this is the link of the CIT to the Framework for Economic and Social Reform, which is the acronym of FESR. And this is the draft of November 2012, which states that tourism is potentially one of Myanmar's most important sectors, enabling various levels of entrepreneurs to benefit from tourism and to integrate with the national economy. Furthermore, the government also ensures in this FESR that a comprehensive tourism strategy will be developed, which will commensurate with the cultural and customary practices of local communities. In addition to that, the link is also to the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of 2011. This is an action plan which directs towards sustainable ecotourism at the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. The Objective 2 mentions that to develop an ecotourism strategy, a policy that ensures benefits for local communities. So as I stated earlier, Myanmar has now adopted a policy on community involvement in tourism in Myanmar, which is complementary and more specific policy for the promotion of community activities in tourism. Now, how did we go about with the process in Myanmar? Now, this process started in February, not too long ago, in 2013, and we had total 8 workshops represented by 250 stakeholders from the public and private sector and local communities from Yangon, Bagan, Inle, Changdong, and Loiko. So we presented the draft CIT policy and we discussed it at the final conference in Naypyidaw, with more than 50 participants from the public and private sector for further comments. The draft was sent to the stakeholders who were not able to participate in the conference. And a month later, in March, we were able to have the final draft, and that was again discussed for the final approval. And the policy has now been launched in Naypyidaw at the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, and I think it calls for a big clap. And yes, thank you very much. Now, and what is the meaning of community involvement in tourism. The meaning of community involvement in tourism, we have identified the challenges of community involvement in tourism. For example, like lack of tourism knowledge and tourism awareness by local communities. We also identified safety and security issues and also increasing pressure on the environment, poor waste management, and so on. There are many others challenges, but we have already circulated the CIT policy. This is the CIT policy, and it's just, we carried all the way from Myanmar, and I hope everybody got it. In case you have not, you would be able to get it on the PDF. So at these the different levels, what we did was, at the different workshops, what we did was we discussed the level of participation of local communities. And the majority, they expressed the concern that a high level of local community participation might not be possible in the short or medium term due to a lack of experience in decision-making processes at this moment. So what did most of these stakeholders recommended was a medium level of participation for the time being, meaning that in decision-making processes on tourism planning and management, communities must be consulted and involved because they directly affect their livelihood. So in this level of participation, final decisions, of course, shall be made in coordination with the private sector and with the approval of the public sector administration. So many participants at the meetings, what they expressed was that communities should be empowered in the long term to have full administration in tourism planning. So the outcome was, I'm still on the meaning of community involvement, why we have chosen that. The outcome of the term community involvement in tourism, CIT, and not community-based tourism as a high level of participation by all community members is the core principle of community-based tourism. And in Myanmar, we have used this word CIT. What does it mean? It means a community participating, and they are also involving in tourism. Now, when we say participating and involving, because in Myanmar we say community as lumu apwe asi, and participating means pa win patet to, where in tourism. So this is a terminology which we have adapted to our language, and then which would be easy for the communities and for the stakeholders to be aware that it is not based as yet, because we don't have a high level, we cannot still have the high level of participation, so we have taken the middle path. Now, what are the core principles of the community involvement in tourism? The core aim of CIT is that a significant number of local community members gradually would gain substantial control and would have greater involvement in the development and management of tourism activities in their region, and that the majority or the major portion of the financial benefits would remain within the local economy. So some of the core principles of CIT would include, most importantly, doing no harm to local communities. Local community participation is being informed, would be informed, and they would have the willingness from the community, respecting the culture, religion, and benefits. So these are some of the core principles which I'm citing, and another important one would be the successful community managed tourism operations necessarily operating within the mainstream tourism network. Now, the policy on community involvement in tourism has 6 objectives, and the first one is strengthening the institutional environment and civil societies. Objective 2 is capacity building for community-related activities in tourism. Objective 3 is developing safeguard systems and procedures to strengthen community planning and management in tourism. Objective 4, encouraging local entrepreneurship through micro and local enterprises. Objective 5, diversifying and developing quality products and services at community level. Objective 6, monitoring positive and adverse impacts of community involvement in tourism. So each objective would have its own action points. For example, Objective 1, strengthening the institutional environment in civil societies, we would have the action point B as mentioning as the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism and the Myanmar Tourism Federation will assign community involvement tourism liaison officers as coordinators, which they would help to facilitate the communication within and among the informal sector and also the government, investors, tourism companies, and ensuring that community involvement in tourism is given appropriate recognition in further national development. Now, on this, the involvement of stakeholders, I would like to highlight that the support, the commitment, and the cooperation of all local tourism stakeholders on community involvement in tourism is essential, are essential factors for long-term sustainability. And in it, we have the role of the public sector, the national government, the role of the local administration. We don't say the local authorities anymore because they are part of the union government and they are also the administrators. The role of the private sector, the role of the communities, which include also the role of the non-governmental and civil society organizations, the role of women, very important, the role of international and domestic visitors. Now, in this part, I would like to include that the policy of community involvement in tourism has now been formulated, and here you would find that it represents a roadmap for upcoming community tourism projects, whereby we would have clear guidelines of how to plan, implement, and monitor the public and private sector communities and other organizations. Now, at this point, if a proposal is come up for a community development, community involvement, if a project comes up for this community involvement in tourism, it would go up to the local administration, the local government, the regional, we call it the regional and state government, and it would be processed from there to the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, which is the focal point. And for the processing, as has been done in other projects, this is the existing guidelines that we have. It could improve from here onwards, and it would go to the Myanmar Investment Commission. So all projects go to Myanmar Investment Commission through the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, and if they come up from the level of the state and regional governments and administration. And from there, the domestic procedure requires the stamping. In other words, when I say stamping, requires the approval, the initial approval, which is very short, from the President's office. And from there, it goes to the Foreign Affairs Policy Committee to have more understanding of the investors' terms and conditions. And from there, it has the final approval from the Cabinet. Now, what are the next steps that we have? The next steps requires that we process, we have the, yes? 1 minute. Yes, but I'm almost finished after next steps. So there's going to be an advisory committee on community involvement in tourism, whereby the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism is the focal point in joint collaboration with the Myanmar Tourism Federation and the related ministries, especially the Home Affairs, Border Affairs, Social Welfare, Education, Culture, Information, and the Ministry of Environmental Conservation and Forestry is involved. And I said earlier, there would be the regional state government representative. As I had mentioned earlier on, for the setup, we would have the community tourism liaison officers designated by the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, and that could also be in collaboration with the Myanmar Tourism Federation. So we'll have 2 liaison officers stationed in the area where the community involvement in tourism project is to be started off. And then there will be a representative of the CIT projects. So for the PDF version of the policy, if any of you didn't get the policy in hard copy, please do not hesitate to contact me and gga.mm@gmail.com or nheusler.consult@gmail.com. And I would be very happy to keep in touch with you. And as I said earlier on, the learning process still continues, so please do not hesitate. And I hand over the floor to my colleague, Aung Swar.
Mingalawa, distinguished guests, respectful speakers, community representatives, all the participants, and the organization committee, good afternoon. Now I would like to, may I stand? And thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this conference. And I'm bringing a very small site case study of Myanmar from Inle, Shan State. And first of all, I would like to present what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you about where Inle is. Probably what many of you have been to Myanmar and Inle Lake, but many of you haven't been to Inle Lake. And about our resort as a private sector, thank you very much, because being as a private sector, I think we are the only one to speak something about this case in this community-based tourism conference. And the experience once we get through the sustainability and the community involvement and the results and the conclusion and the outlook. I go a little bit quickly because I think everybody is running out of time and the coffee is waiting for you. So where is Inle Lake? Inle Lake is in the eastern part of the country, located about 850 meter above the sea level, which is similar to Chiang Mai area, the climate like. It's very pleasant. And surrounded by the high mountain ridges, it's very beautiful. About 70 square kilometers in area. And it is home to about 300 migrate and common birds and more than 50 fishes and nearly 100,000 population who are living along and on the lake Inle. So it is being set as the ASEAN Heritage Park and also enlisted to the UNESCO Heritage Site. So you can imagine how beautiful it is. And at the same time, we are also facing a lot of environmental problems and the degradation of the environmental standards in the area. And Inle Princess Resort, it is whereabout, stands in the eastern part of the lake. And I would like to bring about the story of the where Inle Princess Resort family comes. And as a private sector, the GA, thank you very much, because she defines how community means in our country and how we get involved. We are part of the community, in fact. And this result is come out as a community business people. The owner of the Inle Princess Resort, Yim Yosu, is managing director. She's in this conference hall. They belong to the ethnic minority called Inda and Shan. And Inle area is rich in the biodiversity. Many ethnic people are living in that area, so rich in the culture and the traditions. And her father entered into this hotel business in 1976. This is the early, very first hotelier in the region with 5 bedrooms. And later on, 5 bedrooms only. And in those days, in 1976, the tourists were allowed only a week visa to visit to the country. And starting from 1993, the tourists could get like 2 weeks visa, later on 28 days visa. That's how the tourism was opening in the country. However, with the military government, lots of pressures and the sanctions, embargoes from the West, we have a very hard time in the tourism industry. It's also hard to us, to Inle Princess Resort, really fluctuate. And however, we still stand, we stay strong. And from 2008 to 2010 is the worst time to us. We had to suffer a lot. We have to lose a lot of our staffs and the valuable capacities. But starting from the last 2 years, a lot of changes are happening in the country, also for the tourism sector. A lot of challenges are happening in the country. So right now what I'm going to present about is how Inle Princess Resort is going to get involved, was involved in the community. Being as a local entrepreneur, being the first hotelier in the region, knows how we can attract to the tourist, how we bring the money. If you look at the picture above in the right hand side, you'll see it is a room, interior of our bungalow. We have only 46 bungalows in the whole property. The property is about 20 hectares or 50 acres. You can imagine how big it is for 46 bungalows. And we are using about 90% of the local products only in the resorts. We have our own workshops. We have our own producing workshops. So we employ a lot of people in 46 bungalows. We employ like 150 to 200 people. If we include the daily workers, we are employing like 300 people every day. If you imagine to one room, it is more than 3 people of serving. This is how the community is involving in this resort. We are giving job opportunity for the last 15 years. And apart from that, apart from the job opportunity, our resort is one of the high-end or the luxurious hotels in the area. So we bring a lot of high-end customers in a way. And the benefit from those high-end customers, we are bringing benefits to the community. You see the bridge in this little picture. It is 1,080 feet bridge, which is helping to the community, those who has difficulty to communicate, to transport to their kids to go to the school. This is one of the benefits from the tourism. And the well-equipped hospitals, orphanages, nursery schools, healthcare centers, and the dispensary. These all are we are bringing from as a benefit from the tourism to the community directly. These little pictures are the workshops at the backyard of our hotel. You see how people are working every day. If you come today, you'll see those people. So our belief is, as a good local entrepreneur, being a responsible entrepreneur, we can bring a lot of opportunities and the lessons to the communities. But our case is just a small case. In the whole tourist destination, we are not the only resort. We are bringing a lot of domestic, non-local people, international visitors, but they are not, we cannot guarantee that they will be the responsible as we are. So we are bringing this example, and we are very much aware of the need of the capacity building, and this message to carry forward, to distribute to the local. So we are now in the process of building a vocational training center in our area. The vocational training center, our vision is to be the center of the student, to see the problems of the lake, to see and know how we are facing as environmental problems and the impacts of the tourism, and how we are going to reap as a positive as much as possible to the community. So our center is focusing on that, and aims to produce skilled laborers which is in need of the industry, and the students will be a kind of the solutions to our next generations. We don't target very intelligent people, we are just targeting the high school dropouts, and we are trying to give those knowledge to those people from the local community. And those community we are targeting to produce like 40 people, 40 students a year, and those 40 students we want to produce as a qualified students. They are bringing the knowledge for the solutions of the problems. And the message, how we work together with the community for the benefit getting from the tourism. This is what we are aiming for, what we are planning. This is the layout of our school. We are including like 6 bedrooms, and the school will be covering like the main 4 subjects of the front office: reservation, housekeeping, laundry, and food and beverage production and services. Apart from that, we are putting a lot of knowledges into the mind of the students. The value of the customs and the traditions, the awareness of the environmental problems, empowerment on the woman, how we protect the child abuse in the tourism industry, and good agriculture practice, the right issues, the tourism impacts, and the rule of law, and how to become a good citizen. These are the need as a human being, which whatever you are going, which industry you are working for. So this is what we are going to give to the students starting from next September, and in cooperation with the Norwegian Partnership for Change. They are participating with us. So if you come in September to our lake, you'll see our school. So you all are invited to be a part of our community involvement, tourism, something like that. And I would like to share about the lessons, what we have learned through tourism in the last 15, 20 years. As a local private sector, Inle Princess Resort want to be a little model of example to give a message, because in the next few years, the tourism is going to expand a lot in the country. So many investors, business people, and the visitors are coming to the country. We want to give our example as not a big model, but to bring about for the good of the people, for the community, through the tourism. And the challenges, a lot of people are telling about the challenges of the tourism industry. The properly guided policy from the ministry is urgently needed. And thanks Nicole and Doji A that they just bring about and present you recently about the tourism involvement and policy. Because the challenges for this to bring about is, it will not be that easy it will not be difficult to implement those in the new destination. But in the old destination, like we have run through 15 years of experience in Inle Lake and Bagan, the community has been already involved, and some of the villages has been negatively impacted. We cannot cure them. I don't think we can cure them. But we can prevent in the new destination, in the new villages. So thank you so much for the beautiful and very valuable examples from the morning and this afternoon, case studies from neighboring countries. We can bring about to the new destinations of our villages nearby our area to prevent. So this is my last slide of my presentation. Again, I would like to present that Inle Princess Resort to use as a model, not as a national level, but as a local level. You can use it, and to reap all the positive impacts from tourism and to the community. And again, lastly, I would like to thank you all for being a part of this conference, and Inle Princess Resort as a private sector to be able to participate in this conference. Thank you very much.